goods within the state and collected and shared by the state. Now, IGST stands for Integrated Goods and Service Tax. This is applicable on interstate and import transactions. Tax collected is shared between the center and the state. So, from July 2017, India has been following the dual system or dual model of GST, which is made of SGST and CGST. Usually, transactions which are been either a sale or a supply which has been taken place within the state, then they come under both CGST and SGST. In case a sale which has taken place between the two states, that is interstate sale, in such cases IGST and CGST will be levied. So here they gave you an example, like a distributor in Chennai purchases the goods from a manufacturer in Tirupur, Tamil Nadu only. Since a sale and the movement of goods happens to be within the state, SGST and CGST will be levied on the sale. Now, like let us say a distributor, he is in Belagaum, that is in Karnataka, purchase the goods from a manufacturer in Tamil Nadu, Tirupur. Hence, a sale or a movement of goods happens to be between the two different states. So, IGST is also levied on that sale. So, a sale which has taken place between the states, then IGST is involved. In case if it is within the state, only CGST and SGST is being levied. Now, coming to the zero rated tax. So, the zero rated tax usually naming as there is no tax at all. It is a nil rate of tax. A nil tax that is applied on the goods and services, like milk, the tax is not levied. Curd, the tax is not levied. Eggs, the tax is not levied. Unpacked food grains, also not, the tax is not levied. Even on educational services and health services, GST is not being levied. And a lower rate of GST, as you know, they have given you a slab rate as 5%, 12%, 18%, 25%. Those slab rates, according to that, probably sugar, tea, edible oil, coal, spices, cotton fabric, all that is levied at a lower rate of 5%. And they also see to it to help the prevent inflation from having much impact on the prices of essential items. They'll see to it that only 5% of rate can be levied. Now, mostly the standard rates which have been finalized by GST Council is 12% and 18%. So the processed food, butter, mobile phones will be taxed at 12%. Capital goods, industry, intermediaries, toileries, computers, printers will be taxed the second standard rate of 18%. So you have to take this different slab rates into the account on which the either a GST or SGST, CGST, IGST is supposed to be levied. Now, we need to know what is the benefits of dual of GST. So the benefit here is reduction in the number of taxes at the central and state level. You need not levy central excise, customs duty, sales tax, state sales tax, central sales tax, all that. So many taxes need not be levied. Rather, you can levy only one GST. That means you are reducing the number of taxes. The next, they say decrease in the effective tax rate for many goods. See, you have only four different slabs: 5%, 12%, 18%, and 25% are being levied, not more than that. So, in such cases, here you have only four different slabs, and total goods are being classified under these four slabs. So, effective tax rate is being involved when you implement the dual GST. The next, removing the current cascading effect of the taxes. I told you cascading effect is nothing but here we are uh, taxing on tax. A tax which is paid on tax is called as a cascading effect. That cascading effect supposed to be removed. So GST is implemented or VAT is implemented. Why? Because that is to eliminate the cascading effect. That's the reason to removal of current cascading effect of taxes. The dual has an advantage. The next, they also say transaction cost will be reduced by the taxpayers through a simplified tax compliance. See, because a single rate is levied, only one tax slab is to be taken into the account, only one unified tax system is involved. So, in such cases, what happens is you need not refer to too many and see that what cost will be involved for this such tax, so and so, all that is removed. Only a transaction. You are reducing the transactions. You have only either a sale or a purchase. You are taking that into the account, whether it is interstate sale or within the state, you are classifying accordingly IGST or CGST or SGST you are levying. So automatically here what happens is the reduction in the transactions, reduction in the cost which is being taken care because you have simplified the tax compliance. The next, increased tax collections due to a wider tax base and a better compliance. Here, what you're doing is if you are levying at 18% on the product, that means 9% will be reached to the center, 9% will be reaching to the state. So here, collections are also made easy, and you know very well whatever the rate in that only what is the portion is going to the center, what is the portion is going to the state is being mentioned, and you are classified different products under the different slabs. So it is very easy for you to collect the tax. You can as well increase the collections also. Now, the next, they also see to it that what would be the impact on business. Now, if you take all businesses into the account, whether they have engaged in sales or a supply of goods or services, so first thing, they all will be impacted with GST. Now, supply chain, product pricing, dealer margins, etc., is also being impacted based on this GST. The next, we have to take into the account the service providers are also applicable under the GST. So, the earlier only whether a sale has taken place or a purchase has taken place, we used to consider. But now, if a services are being taken care and who is providing the service, even that person is also applicable under the GST. So even that person comes under the GST purview. Then what is the taxable event? Taxable event here is supplying of the goods. Here the person need to know whether he is supplying the goods or not. If he is supplying the goods, then GST is levied. Supply of services or supply of goods. These are the two taxable events which we will be considering for the levying of GST. So it can be a manufacture of goods, it can be a sale of goods, it can be a redemption of services, whatever may be the issue, but we need to know whether it comes under a supply of goods or services, supply of services. Then we are supposed to levy the tax. Now, coming to the applicability of CGST and SGST on all transactions, we need to see to it that supply of goods will attract both CGST and SGST as applicable on goods. Similarly, for the supply services, they attract CGST and SGST where actually the service is applicable. That also need to be considered. Now, coming to the whatever the tax on import of services and the personal liability, importation of services will be taxed under IGST. Okay, integrated goods and service tax. And that tax will be payable on a reverse charge mechanism. The importer of the services will enhance the need to self-declare. for the payment of the tax. So all this need to be taken care of, and all this comes under benefits or the advantages of dual model of GST. Now let us see the concept of GST. Now coming to the definition of the supply, we need to know what is the concept of supply. Coming to the concept of supply, which is defined under Section 7 of the GST Act, supply includes all forms of supply of goods or services or both, such as a sale or a transfer or a barter or exchange, license, a rental, lease, or a disposal made or agreed to be made for a consideration by a person in the course or furtherance of business. All forms of supply of goods or services. All forms here means a sale. What do you mean by a sale? Sale should have four essential points. What are there four? One, usually what we say is two persons should be involved. One should be a seller, another one should be a buyer, and transfer the goods from the seller to buyer. So that means it should be in goods. So transaction should be taken place as a goods. Goods, that means manufactured in India. Second, it should be a transaction should be taken place between the two persons. One is seller, another one is a buyer. And third, it has to move. The movement of goods to be taken care. It should be a movable good only. Fourth, it should be a reasonable consideration. So anything which is being transferred from one person to another, a movement has been taken place from one person to another, then automatically it should be for a reasonable consideration. That means a value you have to pay. One is giving you the commodity, you are supposed to return back in the form of an amount. A reasonable value should be paid off to the person who is supplying the goods to us. So that becomes a valid sale. So these four essential ingredients should be present if it is to be called as a sale. Now coming to the transfer. Transfer, again here it has to transfer from one person to another. So whatever may be the form, but goods or the supply should transfer from one person to another person. That is a transfer. Next, we will say as barter system. Earlier, before introducing the money exchange value, we used to have a barter system. That is, goods are exchanged for the goods. Even that is also now will be taken as supply of goods. The next is exchange. Here, the goods, there can be an exchange of goods from one person to another. So that is also will be considered. The next we say license. Now to open a medical shop, they are supposed to have the license. Unless until they doesn't have a license, they cannot open a shop. Like that, if a license is not there, they cannot either a sale or a purchase or a manufacturing can be taken place. In such case, license is to be taken under the GST. You can put it on this madam's table only. Right. So that is also one thing which we have to take into the account, that is license also. The next is the rental. So there are certain like products or vehicles or like let us say the function halls which are being uh, lended in on the basis of rental basis only. So that rental also need to be taken, or a lease, maybe the products or the anything which is being supplied on a lease basis, or it may be disposal, it can be sold also, or agreed to be sold for a consideration. As I told you, for a valuable consideration, it should be for a valuable consideration, and it should be done by a person. It is between the person, and it is for the course or furtherance of the business. He is doing for the sake of business. That is what he has to take into the consideration. If he is not taking that into the consideration, then it becomes a problem. So, first of all, whatever maybe is being done, it is to be done for the sake of business. The next, what they say is import of services for a consideration whether or not in the course or a furtherance of business. Now, goods may be or the services may be imported to other countries. Nowadays, all software organizations are working based on this importing of services. In such cases, even they are receiving the consideration when the services are being imported. So, in such case, it is for the sake of business or it is for in the course of business. Even that also comes under the concept of supply. The next, whatever may be the activities which are specified in Schedule 1, made or agreed to be made without a consideration, even that also comes under the concept of supply. The activities which are to be treated as a supply of goods or services as referred in the Schedule 2. So even these two are also need to be considered under the concept of supply. So what actually the supply here means? Supply under GST under section 7 of the GST Act. Supply of goods plus supply of services. These two we have to take into the consideration. So what are the characteristics or the essential characteristics which require to be called as a supply? First one is supply can be goods or a services or a both. So it can be goods or service or both. Supply is must be for a consideration. Supply must be for furtherance of business. It is doing for the sake of business. The next, supply must be made in the taxable territory. So, whatever the supply which is being made, that should be made within the taxable territory. And the supply must be made by a taxable person. The person should be registered and it should be a payable person. So, tax payable person. Supply must be a taxable supply. That means the goods must come under the purview of tax. So, all the six elements which are being present in any of the supply, then these are called as essential characteristics of supply. Now, we said the goods, supply of goods. So, supply of goods can be between the same state. A supply can be made between the states. So, either goods can be taken within the state or between the states, within the state or between the states, whatever may be the goods which are supplied, even that comes under the GST. Now, supply of services also in the same manner, within the state and between the state, those two are also need to be considered under the supply of goods and services or both. Now, sometimes the supply of both goods and services also will take place where it may be called as a composite supply where you will have two instances like for example a car was given for a service. A car is a commodity, it comes under a commodity. Then the activities of maintenance and repair is a supply of service. So two things will be taken care of. So that's the reason why sometimes you are purchasing the car. So car as a commodity comes under the goods. So it can be called as a supply of goods. When we are sending, the goods are also being purchased and maintenance is also being done. In such cases, both comes under goods and services. So this can be taken care of. Now coming to the composite supply. What do you mean by composite supply? The composite supply means a supply made by a taxable person to a recipient. You need to take into the account who is receiving it. Comprises of two or more taxable supplies of goods and services or both or any combination thereof. That should be taken into the account. Now, what is the principal supply? Here, the supply of goods or services which constitutes a predominant element of a composite supply, and to which any other supply forming a part of the composite supply is ancillary. So you have to define whether it is an ancillary or whether it is a principal supply. That is also need to be taken care of. The next, how to determine a tax liability on composite supply. What you have to do, it is compromising of two or more supplies we have to take into the account. One is a principal supply, which shall be treated as a supply of such principal supply. So automatically, if it is within the state, if some person is supplying, the other person is receiving, in such case, you have to see to it that whether one is car is one and maintenance is the other one, or a repair is another one. So car will be treated as a goods and maintenance will be treated as a service. So both is involved, it becomes a composite supply. Like that, we have also have some other examples like TV. Now warranty is also being given and TV is being sold. So automatically supplying of TV is the principal supply, and the warranty and maintenance services relating to the TV, if you take it to the account, it comes under the service. So these two you have to take, that becomes your composite supply. The next, coming to the mixed supply. What do you mean by mixed supply means? Here we have to consider two or more individual supplies of goods or services or any combination thereof made in conjunction with each other by the taxable person. This is one. Second instance where we say is a single price where such supply does not constitute a composite supply. So these are the two things which we have to take into the account. Individual supplies are independent of each other. They are not dependent. They are independent of each other. So in such cases, it comes under your mixed supply. Like let us say, we have to take into the account an example. Like let us say, now a storekeeper selling storage water bottles along with refrigerator. So the bottles and refrigerator can be easily priced and sold independently and are not naturally bundled. So you cannot club that. You have to segregate them. So that you have to take into the account, that comes under your mixed supply. Right. So here usually you have to take into the account two supplies will not be dependent on each other. They are supplied independently. Those are called as mixed supply. Okay. Now coming to the next, we need to take into the account supply must be of a consideration. Now, already we were discussing about consideration. What is consideration? Consideration need does not always mean a money. It can be in kind also. Consideration should be received by the other person. Now, uh, and also he says, whatever may be is supplying to a third person. So the consideration can be a flow from the recipient of the supply to the third person. Even that is also need to be taken. Or any deposits, unsecured loans, refundable or non-refundable, all those also shall not form a part of consideration. So that also you have to take into the account. Next, supply must be for furtherance for business. That means whatever the transactions which are taken place, if it is taken place in a personal capacity, then it is not treated as supply. Personal capacity means I'll purchase a sugar for my own consumption. So in such case, that cannot be taken as the supply of goods. It is for the consumption which I am taken into the account. If a bakery person has purchased this sugar used for the sake of preparing the sweets, biscuits, etc., then automatically he is using the product for the furtherance of the business. So that is called as a supply must be a furtherance of the business. If I'm purchasing from my sake, it cannot come under the GST, right? Only 5% tax I'll be paying, that's end. But the concept of supply, if I need to explain, in such case, a bakery person is purchasing the sugar, using in cakes, in biscuits, in anything, and is selling again. So that is called as a supply. Okay, and it can be inter and intra-state supply also. So here nowadays, because online has come, so automatically the goods may be purchased within the state, outside the state. So in such cases, this also can be treated inter-state sale supply or intra. Both you can take into the. The next is supply must be a taxable supply. That means whatever may be your purchasing, it should be taxable under the GST. That is, you have to take into the account. Then what are the inclusions in the supply? First of all, let us see what are being included in the supply. So what are taxable supplies? So in such case, we can take into the account supply for consideration in course of business or furtherance of business. So all forms and kinds of supply of goods or services or both, such as a sale or a transfer or a barter or a exchange or a license or a rental or a lease or a disposal or agreed to be made, all that can be by a person for a consideration in the course or the furtherance of business should be considered. Next, what are the important of services? First thing is, it should be applicable only for import of services and not for the goods. That is first point need to be remembered. Second, services shall be provided with consideration. Whatever the service you are providing, for that consideration should be received. The third, it should be further course of business or furtherance of the business. That means it is for the sake of a business only, it should be services to be provided. The next, all conditions listed into subsection 11 of IGST relating to the import of service shall be compiled with. So all those which are listed under section 2 and subsection 11 of IGST Act, even all that is to be considered here. Then here you have to take if services were imported into India or some consideration may or may not be in the course of furtherance of business. So all this comes under the importation of services. Now, what is import of service? So here the supplier of the service is located outside India. The recipient of service is located in India. The place of supply of service is in India. Then in such case that is called as import of service. So we have been defining what is import of service. If these three elements are present, then it is defined as import of service. What are the three elements? The first element is supplier of service is located outside India. The recipient of service is located in India. The place of supply of service is in India. Then on import of services, customs duty will also be levied under the Customs Act 1962. IGST also will be levied, and which is section 3, subsection 3 of IGST Act 2017. This is always replaced by the countervail duty and the special additional duty. These duties we will discuss in the later classes, but they say that these two duties are replaced. Right. Now coming to the supply without consideration. Now if you are not paying any consideration, then it cannot be called as a supply. And you may be supplying to a related person or a distinct person. So, like, let us say, who is related person? Who the persons or the officers or directors of one another's business. See, I may be a director in another business. I am supplying the goods to the same business where I am a member of it. I am an officer. I am a director of that particular organization. In such cases, he'll be called as a related person. That means a kith and kin should not be there in the transaction. Even if it is there, they will treat them as a third party. The tax which is levied on a third party, the same manner it is also levied for these persons. So it's a reason why he should not be related either of the business. He should be a legally recognized. Persons should not be an employee employer. Master and servant relationship should not exist. If master and servant relationship exists, then the sale or the supply which has been taken place between the two parties, we say that it is between the related person. So those two should not be taken care of. The next, a third person control or holds 20, greater than or equal to 25% of voting stock or a share of both. So 25% of voting stock or a share of both, even in such case also he will be called as a related person. One of them controls the directly or indirectly by the other, even he will call it as a related person. Then the persons together control a third party, even they are also called as a related person. The persons or the members of the same family, even they are called as a related person. Then he may be a sole agent, sole distributor, sole concessionaire, etc., etc. Even taking that into the account, also he will be called as a related person. Then who is called as a distinct person? Here, like let us say, an example was given, like a Mohan, who is a chartered accountant, registered his head office in Delhi, and he also obtained the registration in the state of West Bengal, and he has newly opened a branch office. So Mohan shall be treated as a distinct person in respect of registrations in West Bengal and Delhi, because he has registered in both, but he is not treated as the related person because he, as a supplier, is supplying the goods. That's the reason why he will be treated as a distinct person. Stock transfer or a branch transfer. Like the head office will transfer the goods to its branch office. In such cases, whatever the transactions which are taken place between the two states, but having the same legal entity, will qualify as a supply under GST, which is a contrast to the real earlier regime. Earlier regime, they treat it as the same transaction, but here they treat it as separate. They are being treated as a distinct person. Any gifts which are being given by employer to employee. So, whatever the gifts which is not exceeding 50,000 in value in a financial year, by an employer to the employee shall not be treated as a supply of goods or services or both. But in case the value is increased by 50, more than 50,000, which is made without any consideration, are subject to taxable under GST. Now, principal and agent. See, usually we say the whatever the goods which are being supplied between a principal and an agent without a consideration, so such supply of goods or services on behalf of the principal is considered as a supply. Earlier, it was not treated as a supply, but now it is treated as a supply because the principal is supplying to the agent. Agent is doing the business on behalf of the principal, but he is acquiring the goods, supplying to some other person. So automatically here what happens is a transaction which is being taken place between a principal and agent, then it should be treated as a supply between the two distinct persons. Here they always say The supply of goods between the principal and agent without consideration is also a supply. Right? The next, deemed to be supply of goods or services. Now, here they say under section 7, subsection 1, clause D of the Act refers to schedule 2 for determining whether a particular transaction is a supply of goods or a supply of services. So, all that need to be taken care of under schedule 2 to determine whether such transaction to be treated as a supply of goods or a service. So, what are the transactions which are covered under the deemed supply? Even that is also we have to take into the consideration what is deemed supply. Now, transfer. Transfer of title is supply of goods. Transfer of right in goods. You have to transfer that right to someone. So that is also comes under a deemed supply. Transfer of undivided share in goods is supply of service. Then transfer of title in future is the supply of goods. Land and building like any lease, tenancy, easement, license to occupy land is comes under a supply of service. Any lease or a letting out of the building, including a commercial, industrial, or a residential complex for a business or a commerce, either wholly or a partly, is a supply of service. Now, the next is treatment of process. How do we treat this? They say that it is to be applied to another person. The goods is deemed to be a supply of service. Hence, that treatment changes the composition and nature of the product. The next, they say transfer of business assets. Now, see, wherever it is forming a part of the assets of a business which are transferred or disposed of under any directions of the person earning on the business so as no longer to be a part of those assets, then such whether or not consideration, such transfer or a disposal is a supply of goods by the person. The next will be treated as goods as a supply of services like a direction of a person carrying on in a business. Goods which are held or used for the purpose of business are put to any private use or used or made available to any person for use or any other purposes for the business, whether or not for a consideration, such kind of supply will be treated as supply of services. So all these comes under the deemed supply. Then supply of services, if you take into the account renting of immobile property, construction of a complex, building, civil structure, or a part thereof, or including a complex or a building intended for sale to a buyer, wholly or partly, except where the entire consideration has been received after insurance of completion certificate. Temporary transfer permitting to use or enjoyment of any intellectual property right, development, design, programming, customization, adaptation, upgradation, enhancement, implementation of information technology software. Next is relating to the tolerate an act or a situation or to do an act or obligation to refrain from an act, agreeing to do any act, all that also comes under the supply of services. The next is transfer of the right to use any commodities, whether or not specified period. Either it can be for a cash or for a deferred payment or other valuable consideration. Here, cash, that means as soon as you transfer the right to use, you may be in return paying the amount. or deferred payment is the future payment. You may not be paying right now, but you agree to pay this amount in future. That becomes your deferred payment. And other valuable consideration, as I told you, the reasonable consideration. Anything which you are supplying in return, you should receive a consideration. Then it is called as a valuable consideration. So all these points comes under your supply of services. The next, composite supply. Now, works contract, if you take into the account, it comes under the composite supply. Works contract deals with two things. One is goods, the another one is services. Both a labor requires like bricks, sand, iron, etc. Because he has to, if at all he wants to construct any wall or building, he requires the material as well as services. So works contract is comes under a component supply. The next they say, even the restaurant, if you take any part of any service or any other manner whatsoever of goods, being food or any other article for human consumption or any drink, alcohol, it is not alcohol, liquor, human consumption. You may be supplying the food or the services. In such cases, those things we have to consider here, and it comes under a composite supply. Right. So now supply of goods already we discussed, stating that it is unincorporated association or a body of persons to a member thereof, even if they deal with such kind of supply of goods, even it comes under the supply of goods. Now we have a negative list also under the supply, exclusions from supply. Now, whatever may be the activities which are specified in Schedule 3, what are the activities which are mentioned in Schedule 3? One is services by employee to employer. As I told you, the master and servant relationship, if it is existing, it cannot be included in the list of supply. They are excluded from the list of supply. So the relationship between employee and employer should not be a master and servant. The next, service by court or a tribunal. So whatever the supply is for the judicial services to the appellant who files an appeals or a petitions or a special leave petitions, etc., or a fee is charged normally for filing application, petition, appeals, etc. Even this comes under the excluding from the supply concept of supply. The services of member of parliament and others, MP, MLA. So even those people who are being defined under Schedule 3 of GST Act, they, even these members, either they may be supplying the goods or services or whatever may be, no GST will be leviable on MP or MLA. Now, services of funeral and burial ground. Now, whatever for the deceased person, either it is a funeral or a burial or a mortuary, including transportation of the deceased, all this comes under negative list. They will not be included under the supply. Next, supply of land or building. Now here land and building, what you are doing here. See, services of construction provided by a builder to a prospective buyer as a service. Now sold during the construction of a building. It is considered as a supply of service by a builder to a prospective buyer. However, it is been sold, obtaining the occupation certificate, and it is considered as a transaction in sale of immobile property, which is not leviable to the tax. Now, actionable claim other than lottery, betting, gambling. So, all these are covered under the Schedule 3, Clause 6 of GST Act. So, lottery, the sale of lottery, betting, gambling, actionable claim will be considered as a supply of service but not for the payment of tax. The next, betting or gambling. Betting and gambling is non taxable services, so even they comes under the negative list of the supply. The next, essential ingredients also need to be taken care. So what are they? First is the person should put on stake some valuable item including money on outcome of a game or a contest. The next, there can be a chance or an accident or a likelihood of anything occurring or not occurring that out of a game or a contest, even that is also present under the ingredients, essential ingredients. The next, coming to the lottery. Lottery is specified as a non-service taxable. The word lottery has been defined in the Black's Law Dictionary, a chance for a prize for a prize, a scheme for distribution of a prize or a prizes by lot or a chance, the number and the value of which is determined by the operator of a lottery. Now coming to the next is activities or the transactions undertaken by the government. This also comes under the negative list. So whatever may be the activities or transactions which are taken by the central government, state government, local authority, or any public authority, this doesn't come under the positive list. In the negative list, they'll come. So such activities shall be notified by the government under section 7, subsection 2, clause B. And it also recommendation of GST Council. So certain activities or the transactions can be notified on the recommendation of GST Council, can be treated under negative list. So all this need to be taken care under the negative list of the supply. Now coming to the inward and outward supplies. Now inward supply means a receipt of goods or a services or both. So whatever, either you're receiving the goods or receiving the services or both you may be receiving. You are receiving from a registered taxable person or a non-resident taxable person. From whom you are receiving? He may be a registered taxable person or he may be a non-resident taxable person. Then what are the details of inward supplies? Now tax payable on reverse charge mechanism or the reverse charge basis, that is one you have to consider. The next, IGST, that is Integrated GST Act, or a credit note or a debit note received after 10th but not on or before 15th of the month succeeding of the tax period. So you have to receive after 10th, but it should not be either on 15th. That is, it should be between 10th and 15th only, not before that, not after that. The next, they say that the details of supply is modified, deleted, or included by the recipient. So all the details of supplies which are modified, deleted, or included in the recipient, even that is also comes under the details of inward supplies. Any error or omission can be rectified. Even this can be taken care of. This is called as inward supply. Coming to the outward supply, any goods or services or both supplied for the course or furtherance of the business, for the sake of business only. If you are supplying either the goods or services, then it comes as called as outward supply. But the business goods used for personal purposes may not constitute as a outward supply. Next here, uh, you have to note down some important points under the outward supply. One is aggregate turnover, which includes supplies qualifying as outward supplies, sending goods for job work outside the state by a composition supplier would not be violated. Details of supplies on which tax is payable. Supplies would also have to be declared in the return for outside supplies, and all these are supposed to be declared in the return called GST return 1. So all these are the important points to be considered for the outward supply. Now coming to the next registration. We need to discuss about the registration. Uh, what is registration? Now, whoever may be the person who is dealing with goods or the services who comes under the purview of GST Act, he has to register under the GST. So here usually they say what is their turnover. Aggregate turnover in a financial year exceeds 20 lakhs, then he has to register under GST. The limit is 10 lakhs for the persons who are conducting the business in northeastern states, including Sikkim. So they have given you only first condition is the turnover should be aggregate turnover should be exceeding 20 lakhs in a financial year. Now, first thing is what is the need for registration? First is it provides a legal recognition as a supplier of goods or services. Next, authorization to collect the tax, opportunity to avail input tax credit, trust of the customer. It increases the trust of the customer and smooth flow of tax. These are the points which need to be considered, which is need to be registered under the GST Act. Now, what are the process is to be taken for registration? The person who is liable to be registered shall apply the registration within 30 days from the date on which he becomes liable to registration. Before applying the registration, he has to declare one is legal name of the business, next PAN, mobile number, email address, where he actually state whether it is a state or a union territory. In part A of the GST form, he has to, under the registration form, he has to mention in the common portal. So, on successful verification of these numbers, a reference number will be generated. Applicant shall submit a Part B form of GST Registration 1, which is duly signed along with the documents specified in the said form at the common portal. If these documents are found to be ordered, a proper officer shall approve the registration within 3 working days from the date of submission. A single registration will be granted from one state or a union territory, and in case of a person having business across the different states and then multiple registrations are granted, even in a single state or a multiple registrations are possible wherever a person has a multiple business verticals. A special economic zone, a developer shall make a separate application for registration as a business vertical distinct from its other units located outside the special economic zone. The time limit for the application is 30 days. Within 30 days, they are supposed to apply. A casual taxable person or a non-resident taxable person shall have to be obtained the registration at least 5 days prior to the commencement. And here, every person who is liable to take a registration or obtains a voluntary registration shall have a permanent account number. That permanent account number will be issued. And every person required to deduct the tax In lieu of permanent account number, a tax deduction and a collection account number is also need to be stated. A non-resident taxable person can obtain registration on the basis of any other document as may be prescribed. Uh, the rest of the portion we will discuss in the tomorrow's class, the registration, etc. We have just started the registration, right? So tomorrow the rest of the things we will discuss. Any doubts? Girls, if you have any doubts, you can ask. Thank you. I think you doesn't have any doubts. So tomorrow we'll be meeting for the same time and we will continue the registration chapter. Thank you.